Welcome to Retro Ricky's Video Games and Computers. On today's episode, we're going to look at Electronics Gaming Monthly, September 1992, issue number 38. So this is the first episode of my Retro Rickies. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going to review magazines that I have. I actually ended up buying a large couple boxes actually of gaming magazines, and a lot of them I sold on eBay, and then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do a video and podcast of the actual magazine, so that way I'll do a video of me actually flipping through the pages so you can see the cover and everything that's in there. But the podcast itself is just going to be me talking about, I'm going to flip through it and tell you, what I see and what I remember back in the day when I actually had these magazines when they first came out. And like I said, I don't have all of them now because I sold a large amount. I must have had, 300 magazines maybe, or more, maybe 400 that I got off somebody from Craigslist. So a lot of them I sold off on eBay to comp some of the money back that that I used to pay for them. So basically that's what this podcast here is about me rating or basically reviewing the magazines. So we'll get started here, and on the cover they have 1992 fall preview, and they have Ren and Stimpy for the Super NES, NES, and Game Boy. They also have EGM previews of Cobra Command CD, which I remember buying when that first came out, Out of This World 2, Super Mario Kart, Mario Paint, and Predator 2. And then they also show Sonic 2 new pics of never before exclusive Game Gear coverage, and a Street Fighter 2 top secret tricks and info, which if you remember EGM, when Street Fighter 2 for the Super Nintendo came out, EGM had so many months of their magazine just for Street Fighter 2. And I remember when Street Fighter 2 came out, I actually imported it. It cost me $130 because I couldn't wait the however many months it was, to come out into the United States. So I actually imported it and bought it, and it was one of the best translations, of the day. So let's go ahead and we'll flip through, and there's advertisements. That's the thing about these magazines, was they really pushed a lot of advertisements. Never played Faceball. And then you have the table of contents. Another advertisement. I love that, kick some balls. And then there's a advertisement with coupons for Software Etc., and I believe they're out of business. I think EB Games or one of those companies bought them out. But it's cool to actually see, the Genesis $5 off coupon for $129. It's pretty cool to see that. Next we have Insert Coin, and it's basically the editor, and he talks about the Street Fighter 2 phenomenon. And another ads, this is. Then you have letters to the editor, and they're talking about hidden tricks in Street Fighter 2 because you know, there was talks that you could use the Game Genie and play as the bosses and all kinds of stuff, which we'll get to then. And then there's another advertisement, some more of letters, ads. Okay, then we get to the review crew, and the review crew is pretty cool because these are the guys that review the games, play the games, review them, and give you a score. And then this is what we would look at, to see if we were going to buy the game or not. And it's funny because this guy, the Sushi X guy, he always was like undercover, never knew who he was, and I still to this day, I haven't looked it up. I guess I could look it up on the net to see who this Sushi X actually was. It's pretty funny. I remember back in the day reading this magazine, wondering, because he was like, "Oh, nobody knows who Sushi X is," but I'll have to look it up and see if they actually came out to say who this guy was. So they reviewed Space Megaforce for the Super Nintendo, and it got a Editor's Choice Gold, and they gave it a 8999, and they said it had awesome special mode 7 effects, which, if you remember, the mode 7 was like a big thing back in the day for Nintendo. Next, you got Strike Gunner for the Super NES. They gave it a 4767 on that, and it's a shooter. And then they have Soul Blazer for the Super Nintendo, and they gave it an 8988, and that also got an Editor's Choice Gold. And that's an adventure game. It looks pretty good. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah, it's pretty nice. And then they rated for the NES, Joe and Mac. They gave it a 6665. I think what I want to do is take these ratings also, and I'll put them on Retro Ricky's blog and have them on there. And then next for the NES, you have B52. And they gave that a 5756. That's a shooter. Excuse me. And then next, Global Gladiators for the Genesis. And they gave that a 6888. Isn't too bad. It's like an action game. It's like a McDonald's game. Or something, because it has a little McDonald's symbol. Weird. Next for the Genesis, USA Basketball, which I gave a 5887. And then for the Genesis, they made 8 NHLPA 93. And they give it an 8988. I used to love these EA hockey games. Every year I'd get Madden, EA hockey game, and Celtics versus Lakers, or whoever they were playing at the time, which was great. Let's see, next we got Stealth. Oh, these Stealth controllers. If you look at the video and you look at these things, it's just funny looking. I wonder what all these buttons do too. They have a lot of switches on them and stuff. Pretty cool. Next, they review Monaco GP2 for the Genesis. And they gave it a 6865. I remember this game. I got this when this came out. It's amazing that it was only 8 megabit cartridge. And next, a TurboGrafx 16 review for Jackie Chan. I had a TurboGrafx 16. I loved Bonk and Splatterhouse. I had those when they came out. It was 5774 was the rating on that. And then for the TurboGrafx 16, they did Utopia 2, which was an RPG, and they gave it a 7876. Looks pretty cool. Next is ads. Then they have a Neo Geo King of Fighters 2 game. I always wanted a Neo Geo back in the days. They were so expensive. And the cartridges were 47 megabits. And they gave it a 5765. It's pretty cool. And then they give the Editor's Choice Gold Award to Bionic Commando for the Game Boy. They give it an 8897. And then they have for the Atari Lynx Kung Food. And the Lynx had the cartridge. The game was 2 megabits. And I gave it a 5657. That's funny. I got the Lynx when it first came out too. Next is the ASCII pad advertisement. Then there's a thing for Hot Pick of the Month from Electronic Arts to push their, of course, their sports games on. I think it's an ad. Yeah, it's an ad. We got some more ads, and then we got Gaming Gossip. I loved the Quarterman's Gaming Gossip back in the days. This is where I would always get the magazine just to read this. I love this part of the magazine. And what's he talking about? Mega Drive CD, which I got when it first came out. And then it's promising to deliver their CD-ROM drive for under $200. And then he's talking about how Nintendo's coming out with their CD drive, which we know never happened because you know the whole Sony thing. And there's an ad for Bulls Lakers, and then Leading Edge. They talk about the actual arcade machines, which is pretty cool. And they go through about Mortal Kombat from Midway. Galactic Storm, and Sand Scorpion, which is a shooter. The other one's like a racer, I guess you can call, like Wipeout. And we got ads, and then there's another little thing that has the Game Doctor, and you would ask him questions, and he would answer, if you had problems. TurboGrafx 16 ads. Turbo Touch 360 controller, I remember that. That's pretty cool, though. It's kind of ahead of its time. And then the International Outlook was pretty cool because this would show you games and info from stuff that's coming out around the world, like Japan. And they had a thing for Out of This World too, which Out of This World was awesome. I mean, back in the day, the graphics were great. And this looks pretty good. And then next, the Game Gear Phantasy Star Gaiden and Sega came out, which is nice. If you guys hear that pounding, that's someone upstairs. And then we got Ranma and a half, which is for the Game Boy. And then for the Mega Drive, they got Landstalker, the Emperor's Treasure, which looks pretty good. It's a 3D perspective RPG. Looks pretty neat. And then for the Game Gear, that Faceball 2000 game, which I never played it, but people, they made a big deal about it, but I don't know. It just wasn't my type of game. And then next you got Super Famicom Psycho Dream, which looks pretty amazing for a Super Nintendo game. I might have to check that out. And then next, Military Battlefield for the Super Famicom. It's like a war risk type, Military Madness, that's what I'm thinking, type of game. Which was great for the TurboGrafx. Military Madness was. Next, Tricks of the Trade. And they're talking about Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo. On how to get special ending screens on it. Which is pretty cool. Like if you beat level 7 without using any continues, you get a graphic ending credits plus a special 12 character ending, including the 4 boss characters. That's pretty cool. And then they have tricks for Devilish for the Genesis. Arch Rivals for the Genesis. I never played Arch Rivals for... Wait, did I play it for... Yeah, I guess I did play it for the Genesis back then. Super Adventure Island, Smash TV Speed Up Mode, which I loved Smash TV. And the Super Nintendo version was pretty good. It wasn't bad. Rival Turf for the Super Nintendo. And these are all codes that you can put in. Yoshi's for the NES and Hook. NES, Play Action Football. Splatterhouse 2 for the Genesis. Super Battle Tank, I like that. Another Street Fighter thing for the configuration screen. And there's an ad here for this All Station. I remember this thing. Or, I'm sorry, Alston. It was like a Game Boy or Game Gear, but it was... And it took these cards, but it was like... little pics... It was weird. I don't remember having all these games, but that's pretty cool. I might do a search on that then. Next is Street Fighter 2. It shows Ken versus Ken, which you can do the same color code, so you could fight the same fighter if you wanted to, which is pretty neat. EGM Express. Capcom starts making Sega games. Mega Drive games unplayable on Genesis. New Street Fighter 2 stick. It's just talking about the Mega CD. That's a pretty cool article. And they're talking about a control stick that they made for the Street Fighter 2. And then next wave is, I guess, games that are going to be coming out. And I remember this Cobra Command, not only in the arcade, but I remember having this on the Sega CD. And they talk about it, show the levels 1, 2, and 3. And then they show Faceball 2000 for the Super NES and Flintstones, Chester Cheetah, Superman, King Arthur's World, Twisted Flipper, Super Mario Kart. It's pretty cool. Cypock, I love that game. And on the Genesis, that's the one I had, the Genesis one. I loved it. Prince of Persia, Super Mario Land 2. Oh, Turtles in Time advertisement for the Super Nintendo. Then we get into the I guess the extended review area. They're showing the Ren and Stimpy show. They tell you the number of levels and how many megs. This is the Game Boy version. When it's available. So this is stuff that would have been coming out in the next couple months of the magazine. They show Street Fighter 2 for the Super Nintendo, which was a 16 meg cart. And I remember I imported this thing. It was like $100 and some, and I imported it. And they show you the bonus rounds, which was great because they actually had the bonus rounds in the game, just like the arcade. I mean, it was close to the arcade. I pounded so much money in that arcade machine. Next, there's Universal Soldier. Kind of like a Contra game. Difficulty was moderate, available fourth quarter. Shows the completion. Harley's Humongous Adventure, which I don't even remember. But I'll have to look this up. It looks pretty decent. It's for the Super Nintendo. Electronic Arts made it. Looks pretty cool. Mario Paint. I remember this. Came with a mouse, so you could draw and paint and music stuff. It was pretty cool. And then next page you got Prince of Persia. 8 meg cartridge for the Super NES. And then Super Buster Brothers. This looks pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting, huh? This is my little son's with me now, looking at these old mags, and yeah, that's a shield. And then next we got Imperium, which looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. It's like a shooter. It's for the Super NES. Baseball Simulator 1000 ad. I waited forever for that game to come out. I could not wait. I wanted it so bad. Warp Speed, which is a game for the Super NES. Yeah, it's a shooter. Yep, Rocket Ship. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then Cyber Spin for the Super NES. What is that, car? Race car, yep. The Dual Test Drive 2. Yep. That's for the Super Nintendo. That looks pretty good. I see. Yep. They're race cars, huh? Yep, race cars. Okay. Next, Super Batter Up. Baseball game. It's like a bases loaded. So for the Super Nintendo. It looks pretty decent. Chips and Bits advertisement. I used to love, looking at this and be like, oh man, Street Fighter 2 for $64. That's yeah, $64. And Dungeons and Dragons had Crash and the Boys. Crash and Boys, the Street Challenge. That's pretty cool. I may have to check that one out. For that. That's for the NES. Power Blade 2. That's for the NES. Yeah. And it's like a Terminator type deal. Stunt Kids for the NES. Yeah. Stunt Kids. Gargoyles Quest 2. That's for the NES. Techno Cup Soccer. I used to love the Techno games. Techno Super Bowl. Oh man, that was just the best. The best. Yep, the best. And then there's a write-up on like a review. Yep, that's Sonic for Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Game Gear. And it's the first 4 meg Game Gear cart. 4 megs. And they show you, this is part 2 of it, so they show you a map. And then they show you Monaco GP2 for the Genesis. That looks pretty neat. And then Batman Returns. Yep, Batman Returns, that's for the Genesis. Green Dog for the Genesis. X Mutants. I never played that. I might have to look at that. That's for the Genesis too. That's an 8 meg. Uncharted Waters for the Genesis, 8 meg. It's like it's a strategy RPG. RBI Baseball 4. Baseball. Yep, baseball. That looks pretty good for the time. And HLPA Hockey. Hockey. Yep, hockey for the Genesis. Team USA Basketball. Basketball. Yep, basketball. Super High Impact Football. Ball. Look at that setup. Oh, Die Hard. I remember Die Hard. A lot of stuff for sale. And for the TurboGrafx, they got Soldier Blade. That's a plane for a shooter. That's a plane. That's a pilot. And then World Heroes for the Neo Geo. Yeah, I wasn't really a World Heroes person. Chuck Rock for the Game Gear. That's Sonic on the Game Gear. RC Grand Prix.
What's that?
Let me see. That's a car. That's a race car. That's pretty cool, huh? That's for the Game Gear. Yep, race cars for the Game Gear. Oh, there's Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yep, Star Wars. Knight's Quest. There's the Atari Lynx. Yep, Daddy used to have one of those when they first came out. Pinball Jam for the Lynx. Turbo Express. Super Play Axlay. There's an Axlay 95% complete. It comes out in November. Yeah, that was a good game. It shows the map of the levels. There's level 2. There's bosses. Next you have electronic games. Come visit our stores and get $5 off. Marketplace. Then at the end they have a game over and it shows some of the Street Fighter World Warriors endings. And then they show you video game scores, and that's it. That's all with September 1992 EGM.